Hello and welcome to the Talksport Fan Network. This is Settle the Score with me, Angelina Kelly. Today we are reacting to Liverpool's 2-2 draw at Villa Park. Joining me are Chris Budd from the My Old Man Said podcast and Mike Quill from Liverpool Unfiltered. Chris, coming to you first. Villa's ninth Premier League draw now. Did you walk away from that fixture feeling frustrated or just happy to get a point against Liverpool?
A bit of both, I guess. It's probably a good result for Villa. Well, probably a good result for both teams. Actually, it wasn't a bad draw for either side. But it was more the context of when you sort of zoom out a bit. Obviously, we'd drawn with Ipswich at the weekend, which was a bad result for Villa. And I think with Chelsea to come, it sort of piles the pressure on Saturday's game against them. That for us now, it becomes a bit of a must-win game at the weekend for the sort of the top four, top five race. Whereas actually a win against Ipswich would have made the result against Liverpool a slightly better result, I think.
And Mike, under Arne Slot, there's been a lot of talk about Liverpool's style of play and how things have maybe become a little bit calmer than when Jurgen Klopp was at the helm. Do you feel like after watching that game, do you think Liverpool are maybe reverting back to type a little bit and going back to being a little bit more chaotic?
I tell you what, it was really present against Everton as well. I feel like there's maybe it's a nerves thing. I really don't think it's a case of Slot's emotion. He's a very composed man, except the final minute or so at Goodison Park. But it feels like the players are starting to feel it a little bit more now. And whether that's brought on just a case of they're maybe reading things online a little bit more, maybe it's the fatigue of a game every 3 days, and he doesn't rotate the team much. But there does seem to be nerves creeping into the decision making of even some of the more experienced players. So it's not by plan, but it definitely does feel like a bit of a de-evolution in a way.
I mean, you're talking about, nerves setting in. Darwin Núñez missing that chance.
Oh
Diogo
dear.
Jota. I
I
mean,
bet Chris was laughing, wasn't he?
I
Yeah.
know I was, were you? I mean, do you look at things like that and just worry if the supporting cast up top for Salah are not pulling their weight?
Yeah, listen, that's been a concern among Liverpool fans all season. Núñez obviously is getting the headlines right now, given that performance as well, not just the finish, but the performance. But it's been a feeling among Liverpool fans, whether it's been Chiesa, not getting many minutes on the pitch, whether it's been Szoboszlai, although playing very well, not really contributing in terms of goals and assists, Jota missing a large amount through injury, and then Gakpo and Diaz just haven't really hit the heights that we, as Liverpool fans, hoped. And Gakpo's had a good season, but he's still not anywhere near the caliber that we're used to with whether it's a Firmino or a Sadio Mane from a few years ago. So it does feel right now there's a lot of pressure on the back of Mo Salah, which he's handling very well considering.
One player that has had a lot of pressure that is now at Aston Villa is Marcus Rashford. He looked good at times for Villa in the game. Were you worried, Chris, when it was announced that he was coming to your club? Because there's been a lot of talk about his attitude, his application. After seeing him for 2 appearances now, how do you feel about him? And are you a little bit concerned about things like his mentality, etc.?
To be honest, not so much. I always thought it was sort of fairly low risk because it's a loan and just a massive gain because everybody knows what Rashford can do on a good day. I felt that when you looked around a lot of the other players at Man United, it just looked like a completely toxic environment for everybody there. Look at what Anthony's done now. He's gone to Betis. He's playing really well. Other guys have left. McTominay's doing pretty well over in Italy. I thought Rashford for Villa is a sort of a setup and a manager that Emery gets the best out of the guys who he has played for him. And I think that, obviously he was always going to kind of raise his game last night against, obviously one of the teams he wants to perform best against. And his record, if I remember rightly, is actually pretty good against Liverpool. So I always felt he'd have a good game. He looked very good when he came off the bench against Ipswich and against Tottenham in the Cup. I guess they're all sort of different games and he's played at home, maybe away from home in Europe, we'll see. But he won't get in the team if he's not working hard because he's got Jacob Ramsey who has that spot. And Villa's attacking sort of options now are just our depth in that position, unlike at centre-back, for example, is so good at the moment that if he's not pulling up trees, he's going to find himself on the bench quickly. And I actually don't mind him coming off the bench as an impact player because he's quick, he's lively, he's direct, and he can make things happen, which he has done in the last few games.
I've got to ask though, when he arrived at Aston Villa and he gave the speech about how, when Aston Villa came calling, it was, that was the club I wanted to go to. As Villa fans, did you believe him? Because I'll be honest, I didn't.
With all these things, these guys are so media trained that I'm just like, well, whatever, mate. Let's see what you're going to do on the pitch. Because he's one of those players, isn't he, where there's so much talk, be it from Man United fans or the media or other. Everybody has an opinion on him, especially sort of post lockdown with all his non-footballing activities. And I just thought, actually, he probably needs to come to somewhere like Villa and just knuckle down and bury himself away amongst what is a really good group of players, and he's got great personalities. You can't not enjoy spending time with someone like John McGinn, and he's got Emi Martinez and other guys. And you think he's going to have a great time at Villa, even if he's just here for 4 months.
As long as he don't lead him astray. As long as he don't lead him astray.
Oh, there we go. Hey, listen. I can't.
There's fun to be had.
I say this. Listen, I say I think Rashford. I'm a Liverpool fan, but he's a quality player. And him and Asensio in January was an incredible bit of business by you. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, and on all the guys we brought in, I think it was actually a really proactive move by Emery, who clearly knew at Christmas that things weren't going the way he wanted to, and to sort of allow Duran to go for mega bucks to Saudi and go, well, we can reinvest the money now. It allowed them to bring in guys like Rashford, Asensio, Marlon from Dortmund. We got Garcia, and even Disasi, who had a very good game against Liverpool from Chelsea. We did some fairly decent business, and you think, well, when Villa get all their players back, because we're fairly depleted by injury at the moment, Villa's depth is going to be great. And I do think, even though we're kind of not wobbling, but we've had a bumpy period this side of Christmas, that I think we can really get a second wind going into obviously an exciting round of 16 in the Champions League and an FA Cup that I really fancy Villa to go deep in, and then hopefully make a good fist of maybe not getting top 4, but certainly top 5.
Talking about, the Premier League, that race for the top 4 and those European places, when you look at the season as a whole, are you a bit concerned about getting European football next season? Because there are so many teams in competition for those top 6, 7 places.
Yeah, I think you've got to be. It was always going to be tough for Villa to juggle the workload, but then actually it's not just it's kind of been a very lazy attitude to say, oh, just because Villa are playing in the Champions League, they're going to drop off in the league. I think actually we've had injuries and we've just not been playing that well all season, really. We've just seemed to have turned up in the Champions League in a few games. Lest we forget, we went to Bruges and were terrible. We went to Monaco and were terrible. So it's not like we've been infallible in the Champions League either. But I think Villa need to sort of get a little bit of momentum in the second half of the season. And then we've got the firepower to really go on a run, because I think we're going to need to now, just because we're a bit far behind Forest. We're actually probably fortunate, I guess, aren't we, that Forest have had a couple of defeats recently. Newcastle's form recently has been patchy. Chelsea as well, and other teams around us. Everyone's kind of dropping points, which is why I think Liverpool are where they are, because they've actually been probably one of the few consistent sides this year.
I mean, talking about, you mentioned firepower there. Firepower with Liverpool, Mo Salah. I mean, one of these there was so many stats from that game, but one of them was that Salah has now scored and assisted in 10 different league games this season. The last player to do that in Europe's big 5 leagues was Lionel Messi 10 years ago for Barcelona. Now, I know Real Madrid have got this thing that Vinicius Junior's name needs to be etched on that Ballon d'Or next year. But Mike, would it be a crime if he didn't get it, or at least was in the top 3 contenders for it?
I think right now, if you look around Europe, the top 3 for me it's Rafinha, it's Salah, and it's Virgil van Dijk are the 3 best players on the planet right now. In my opinion, now obviously very biased. Chris might be shaking his head, thinking Rashford should be up there. 2 great games, he should probably be in with a shout. But I think you look at Salah's stats. He's 12 games to go. He's played 26. Well, he's played 26 games. He's 5 assists off matching Henry's 2020 season. If he's on track now, I think for 23 assists and 34 goals. If he pulls that off, he's produced more goals and assists than Alan Shearer did back when there was 40 plus games in the Premier League. This isn't what's bizarre as well, it doesn't feel abnormal. You got to remember, this is his 8th, 9th season now at the very top level. I feel like, you see comparisons, to like Eden Hazard sometimes, or, you get other wingers in the Premier League and you go, I just don't think that's where he's cut from. That's not his cloth. And I get maybe first couple of years, absolutely understandable. And that's no disrespect to the likes of Eden Hazard. But Salah right now, and for the last few years, he's carried Liverpool on his back, akin to the likes of a Gerrard, in the sense, in troubled times, we look to him. Troubled times I look at the Newcastle game. We drew 3-3 in that game. Salah was head and shoulders the best player on the pitch. The Everton game, we drew that game. Head and shoulders the best player on the pitch. The Villa game, he wasn't the best player in Villa. I'm not going to say that, don't worry. But he was certainly one of the better ones. And again, our attack, if you remove Salah from our attack, nothing happens in any of our moves. And it's a massive concern as well, because of course his contract, and I'm sure that's probably somewhere down the line of conversation. That's always going to be a conversation at the moment. But the season he's having right now is one I don't think is appreciated until it's past. I think in the moment we're talking about Salah, he's having a good season, having a very good season. This is a season that will not be matched for the next decade. I truly believe that. This is outstanding. This is a winger we're talking about as well. Let's not forget.
Exactly why, I think that he should be in contention for that Ballon d'Or, because the numbers he's producing, they are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the time of recording, Aston Villa and Liverpool, okay, you guys could play each other. You could face each other in the Champions League. I'm just going to put it out there. Who would win?
Don't do this, Chris.
Go on, Chris, do it.
Is the second leg at Anfield?
Oh, please. Even if the first leg was at Anfield, what are we doing? It's a Champions League night, Chris.
What does that mean?
Be honest.
I mean, on paper,
you don't know what that means, Chris.
No, exactly. What do you mean, though? A Champions League like at Anfield?
Jokes aside.
On paper, Liverpool should get through that. Just because I think they've got so much experience over two legs, especially. Our knockout experience in Europe in general, we don't have it. I mean, you'd always fancy Villa to get a result at Villa Park, but would I fancy Villa to go away to Anfield and if they had to get a win, get one? No, to be brutally honest.
I would say, Chris, you know what? In defence of Villa, I do think you'll go far. And to be honest, I'm someone who roots for Aston Villa, except for yesterday, right? I think you've got one of the most underappreciated managers in the world. I think United is...
And his track record in Europe is good.
Oh, don't remind me. He beat us in the Europa League final. I still have flashbacks to it. He's an incredible manager, and he's very likeable. And I think his reputation, it took a hit at Arsenal, with... I really just think, whether it was a case of the media or the timing at Arsenal, it didn't really click. But I think right there at Aston Villa, it's a perfect situation, And if we face you in the Champions League, I wouldn't take too much joy in knocking you out, but we still would knock you out. But it'd be to
be honest, I want a nice sunny trip. I want a nice sunny trip to Barcelona anyway. So.
Oh dear, I think you never know. You could do something there. They can't do anything at Villa Park.
I think we could. To be honest, I would fancy Villa at Villa Park against anybody in Europe right now. I just worry about us defensively going to sort of, Liverpool or Barca, or even in the next round, Bruges looked pretty good actually on the road against Atalanta and Dortmund, who we'll get, and I think there's going to be some interesting games.
Chris, I think Bruges are perfect for a team if they played us. I'd worry if we played Bruges in the sense that they are set up to be the underdog. I think if you play Bruges, I really think you'd be a good match for them. I don't think you'll find too much issue with Bruges. I don't. That's why I worry, to be honest. You might go quite far in the competition. We might have to face you.
Maybe.
And we can end up back on here. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll settle the score again, see what happens with that draw, and then we can circle back to it. Looking more at the Premier League now, and Mike, I've got to ask you, because I've had a few Arsenal fans around me, discussing what's been going on. Be honest, are you a little bit nervous about this title race? Are you a little bit nervous that Arsenal could actually catch you?
You shouldn't be.
You can be honest. Safe space.
No, you say a safe space. Yeah, like this is private. Okay. I'll tell you this. I just got off recording an episode for Liverpool Unfiltered, and I said straight after to my co-host Adil that I had lied on the podcast. So I was very composed on the podcast, and I was like, listen, I'm not too concerned. But I'm a little bit nervous. But it's not nerves so much as Arsenal catching us. It's more so we're stopping in the race. We stopped allowing them to catch us more than anything.
Having a Steven Gerrard-esque slip in the race.
You know what? I was really enjoying this conversation until that. My gosh. Are you sure you're not an Arsenal?
I'm sorry.
Who do you support?
Don't worry who I support.
I know who you support. Bringing that up. I tell you what. Listen, I don't think we're going to have a Steven Gerrard slip. No. Jeez, flashbacks to that. My God.
Sorry.
It's trauma. It's trauma that you're bringing up here.
PTSD.
It really is. But no, I think the next week or so is very crucial. You hear that all the time in football. The next week's crucial. But I look at our next two games and Arsenal's next three. Arsenal have West Ham. I think they knock West Ham out of the park. I don't think that's an issue. I think Graham Potter, they're playing good football. I don't think they'll be able to handle Arsenal. I think Arsenal's fans will be up for it. City for us, I think, will be a draw. I really want to win, but the Etihad for Liverpool is just always one of those grounds. It's the game after. We have Newcastle at home, and Arsenal go away to Notts Forest. And Nottingham Forest, for me, are they're one of the deadliest teams in the league right now. They are fantastic to watch if you appreciate old-fashioned Barclays football, and that's exactly what they play there. So I think Arsenal drop points against Forest, and it's what we do against Newcastle. I think if we win, they drop points, and we reopen that gap to 7-8 points or whatever it may be. I'm fine, and I think the league's done. I think.
Do Arsenal still have to come to Anfield?
Yeah, they still have to come to Anfield.
No chance.
They've still got to play Chelsea.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Chris, yes, I love that. Can you be a Liverpool fan? Do me a favour, mate. Half our fan base don't have as much confidence as you do. Where there's a nervousness, and you can feel it at Anfield as well, that's the upsetting part. It's creeping into the atmosphere now.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see Angelina's having an absolute delight of a time. She loves hearing that.
Not at all. Not at all. I am a main neutral in this conversation. But it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that. And Chris, finally, talking about Aston Villa. I know that you already said before we hit record that you've got big hopes to defeat Manchester City at Wembley. That's the aim for Villa this season.
Well, I'll just look at, we've got the top four last year, and we got the amazing run the year before to come from sort of relegation fodder to get into Europe. And I think, you don't get a trophy for top four. Villa fans have been so starved of success that I think we really do look at the FA Cup now, and you think there's nobody in there who we can't beat. I jokingly said, I'd fancy us against City, but frankly, I'd fancy us against anybody in a one-off game. And I just think the Champions League is an adventure for us to be enjoyed. Are we going to go all the way? I don't really think so, but we're going to enjoy every step of the way. The league, are we going to get top four? It's going to be a big ask. Whereas actually, can we, guarantee football in Europe next year by winning the FA Cup? I think it's realistic. And you want that moment of achieving silverware while it still means something. Obviously, with the FA Cup year on year getting devalued. While it still means something, certainly to the fans, I think Emery knows that actually a trophy would be big and kind of validate all the kind of progress we've made in the last 2 years, 3 years.
Well, all I can say is we're going to have to wait for that Champions League draw and maybe bring you guys back, because if we are going to have Liverpool versus Aston Villa, I think that we will have a very, very interesting conversation. Massive thank you to Chris Budd from the My Old Man Said podcast and Mike Quill from Liverpool Unfiltered. This has been the Talksport Fan Network Settle the Score, and we'll be back very soon.